I've been sitting with this conversation that I had with someone recently where we talked about how Rome wasn't destroyed in a day or it didn't have its downfall in one day. And I think like when I grew up, I've always heard Rome wasn't built in a day. That's like the thing that like kind of like I hear it everywhere, but I never thought about how Rome didn't fall in a day. And I think when I look back at like history books, and what I was taught in school, like when you hear about the end of empires or like end of something, there's always like a day or a certain point in time that can be pointed to. And um, I don't think it ever is ever a day or was ever a day. The people that were living inside the Roman Empire before it fell and while it fell, I don't think there was one day that they woke up and they were like, okay, today is the day that everything is over as we know it. They just got to keep living life and keep showing up for their families and keep trying to put food on their table um, and perhaps how they put food on their table or where they work slowly shifted and changed. But I don't think there was ever like a massive shift that anyone could point to. But when you look back at history, we as human beings, I feel like we need a box to put things in order to understand them. And so it's easy to point to like, okay, it happened on this day or this moment. And why I bring this up is because I feel like we're watching, I don't know if it's a fall of an empire or definitely a shift in what has been a global leader as the US for over a century now. And I don't think many people are aware of the fact that we're living through history right now. And like how that shows up for me is all the stuff that makes me overwhelmed to stay in tune with the news lately. I mean, for the past week, I've taken a break from even making this content because it just feels so overwhelming. Every day it's like something new, something more intense, something that's like, how is this happening? And it's easier to just like tune out completely than actually stay focused because the focus keeps shifting to something even more insane than the day before. And I think the shift, and I think like first I want to get into like why this conversation matters to me because I made this channel to talk about XRP. And I started this channel because I wanted to explain XRP because most people that I talk to about it, like they immediately attach it to blockchain. I've talked or to Bitcoin, and I've talked about this at nauseum on this channel. But like, and I knew it was something completely different, so I wanted to explain it in a way that was understandable and digestible for like anyone. And over time, as talking about XRP, it's caused me to also get focused or turn my vision on geopolitics just because XRP in itself is meant to run beside, under, and like intertwine with institutional finance. And institutional finance is dictated by geopolitics. And so the channel's kind of shifting in how I like tackle this information. And I think the thing that's like been super challenging for me as a black man who wasn't taught finance, and it might get really boring for someone to hear me say this that doesn't have that experience, but I was never taught how to be at this table. And so like getting it perfect talking about it was also like a undercover goal that I had, and so that I could like prove that I like earned the seat. And it's funny because I created a TikTok page recently and have been like showing what it's like to like build something without having proof that it's gonna work, as opposed to like talking about this channel. And building the TikTok, it's like given more space for my voice to move and just function like without a script, just trusting my thoughts. And I wanted to bring that here and give it a try and see how it works. And plus, I just had so many ideas. And so, back to XRP and like why I think the Rome thing and how it connected it is because we, in my opinion, are living through history right now. And that history started, I don't think it started with the Iran conflict that we're watching kind of play out at this moment. I think it started years ago. And I think it started with the Iran deal that was ripped up by the current administration that was created by Obama. And I think by ripping up that Iran trade deal, it created a shift that was holding something very important in place. And I think that led to something else that I think is kind of like maybe going like this is something that wasn't covered much was when Saudi Arabia, who back in the 70s, I think I talked about this just a little bit, but back in the 70s, the US was backed by gold. And eventually that relationship to gold ended. And for 3 years, there was nothing that supported it. And then there was an opportunity for Saudi Arabia to need and want security. And so through that security, they made a deal with the US to for the US to bring their army to help like keep Saudi Arabia and other nations safe, and in return, the oil that they produce would back the US dollar. And so it gave the US dollar something to lean on or to stand on. And that agreement ended a few years ago or a couple years ago. And so it ended, and now the US dollar doesn't have anything to stand on except the trust that it is going to be able to survive and be trustworthy. But something that's really unique about this moment is that the US has abandoned a lot of its ally relationships around the world and has positioned itself as almost some would call it like a bully. And through that positioning, it's like pushed other nations away to look at their dependence on America for any or everything. And I think these moves are happening as most of the news media and most people are focused on tweets that are coming out every day, and we're missing these major milestones that are creating new ways of world order. And it's quite interesting to watch and to be present to. I mean, major things are happening in my head that are hard to connect, but I think about the fact that Canada is in the talks of becoming part of the EU. That's something that was never expected, but it happened through the push of Canada becoming a 51st state of the US, and Canada, I'm sure, looking at how do we stand on our own? How do we fight back against that? And then I think about the new trade deal between India and between China. That's something that would have never existed or would have been huge news, but it was not even a full news cycle, but this creates a new relationship. I hear about how Mexico is building or has built a port to get around the Panama Canal, and the Panama Canal has been used by the U.S. as a strong point to control countries in the southern hemisphere. And now Mexico, because of this new port, is able to shorten their trade movement time by 5 days and save billions, if not trillions of dollars. And these are major shifts that are happening that are making the U.S. no longer the center of conversation, of need to be focused on. And so these are the part that I think we're living through history in the moment, and no one is really paying attention because there's so much happening. And the part that connects it back to XRP and blockchain for me, not directly, but is that we have seen the US already talk about how they are moving towards blockchain and making the rules easier with the SEC and the FTCC. I hope I get that right. To make the laws easier so that when Congress passes blockchain and stablecoin regulation will be like something easier to flow. So we're seeing that happen. That's going to be coming out soon, and like a welcome to whatever regulations come. And then at the same time, we go across the pond and to the Middle East, and we're seeing that Iran, with this block of the Strait of Hormuz, is also through the blockade has positioned trade away from the dollar, and they're saying and they're implying that the oil can be settled in Chinese yuan or in stablecoins, and we're seeing stablecoins rise to this moment. And we're seeing institutions of this new technology being met at a time when like global shifts are happening. And then also, like, the other point that seems to be very interesting to me is that we've seen Brazil come out and make statements about how, like, what the US is doing is absolutely insane and cannot be tolerated. We're seeing China and and Russia, who are like moving closer to support Iran through this war. And we're setting up to like this new order that's forming. And I even recently, like, so much in my mind, but I even recently heard about a friend who was advised, like, put more money in gold. And it's because of this uncertainty, I believe, that's happening in the world. And like the last thing I'll like touch on, and I know I've kind of talked about so many things, is like the other thing that I'm really interested to see play out is something that is really kind of the stronghold of the US dollar is the stock market. And with all of these new announcements, we've heard of insider trade deals that are happening alongside these announcements. And so, my idea, or what I think happens, is when you have this system that has been built and people understand the strength and security and safety and trust for the dollar and for money in general, but when that system can be manipulated by things that are changing through tweets, you then have to concur over time that the system itself is no longer as strong as you think it is. And so I don't know where any of this plays out. I haven't even been able to focus on the movement of XRP lately because there's just so much happening with the world. So it's like, how can I even, like, it's so hard to even be focused on blockchain because the world seems so insane right now. And so my point is, I think we are already living inside history being made, and I don't think most people are aware of it. Tell me what you think of this. I just kind of went off the riff without the script because I wanted to just talk to you, and I'm curious to see how this lands. Or, I mean, either way, I don't really care how it lands, but I do care how it lands. And I'm rambling now. But yeah, tell me what you think. I'd love to hear your comments, and I'll see you on the next one.